all the way up till 11 p.m. You can call in 315-443-2011. Join the conversation with Skylar Wilkes and Adam Gotkin. I mean, guys, Syracuse wins big, their biggest margin of the season. You guys are probably in a good mood, right?
Well, Ryan, we're in our mood. I don't know if good is necessarily the right word. I mean, there's definitely stuff to be satisfied with and happy with, but there's also things that didn't go so well for Syracuse. But either way, a 102-85 win over the Great Danes. Offensive improvements were there, Adam, much improved from last time out against Notre Dame.
I mean, thank goodness, because UAlbany is not a great basketball team. It's kind of sad that Syracuse can beat a team as bad as this by just 17, and we're happy about it. This should be the norm, but with how this season has gone, I guess Ryan is right. Maybe we have to look at the little things and enjoy them.
Well, I know we'll definitely enjoy having Nathaniel Cunningham join us. He was inside the Dome, and he'll join us here in the studio to provide some insight on what happened inside the Dome when Syracuse took down UAlbany. All that and more coming up right now on the Double Overtime.
The game may be over, but our coverage on WAER is not. Here on the Double Overtime, we'll be breaking down all the highs.
Copeland, left wing three! It's good! Quadir Copeland wins the game for Syracuse! For the first time in 1,856 days, Syracuse beats an AP Top 10 team.
Darling drives to his right, puts up a layup. No, but Copeland with the putback slam! Oh my goodness, Quadir Copeland makes a statement!
And the lows.
Syracuse walked into John Paul Jones Arena looking to make a statement, and Virginia said, oh no you don't. Cavaliers 84, Orange 62, your final.
Well, Syracuse heads into North Carolina and faces its worst loss in its history in the Atlantic Coast Conference.
Heartbreaking. The Orange bow out in the second round of the ACC tournament for the second year in a row.
Delivering our hottest takes along the way.
The expectations should be higher after a few years when Adrian Autry sets that bar, but the bar is still low.
5-star, Donnie Freeman. Yep. I mean, this guy has the tools. I think he could be the truth.
I think Lampkin and the combination of him and Carlos will rejuvenize this team and make them an actual complete basketball team.
Get your voice heard by calling in at 315-443-2011 or check out our YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. It's the Double Overtime, and it starts right now.
The Double Overtime does start right now. Alongside Adam Gotkin, Skylar Wilkes here on WAER. Syracuse back in the win column with a 102-85 victory over UAlbany. If you want to talk about this Empire State Clash, call in 315-443-2011. Text us 315-556-3929. And definitely follow along on YouTube at WAR Sports Talk or even on Twitter. Adam, Syracuse has struggled against mid-major opponents. They've struggled this season. Youngstown State went to double overtime. Lemoyne went down to the wire. Colgate went down to the wire. This game was closer than the 17 points indicate, but the offense was just so much better than it was against Notre Dame. 63% on the game from the field. And especially even free throws, 88%, just 2 misses. This is the type of game you need from Syracuse. I know it's not going to be really repeatable. You can't consistently produce this type of offense, but you need more of this for Syracuse going forward.
Yeah, they needed this. I think if there wasn't a game like this, then all the alarm bells would be going off, and we would be talking about some bad things. Because after the Notre Dame game and the Tennessee game and all of the disappointments early in the season where this team barely beat a bunch of bad teams, they needed a game offensively where they could actually make shots, and they finally got that tonight. I think this is a bit of a sigh of relief. I don't think you can go that far because, again, we got to talk about the opponent here, and when you think about what this offense has done against good teams, it's still not great, but just the fact that they were able to look competent, I think, is a positive.
No, you're right. And defense, right? Like, that's been the thing that Adrian Autry keeps talking about time in and time out of, defense is we've been struggling, and 85 points
Not
to
good.
UAlbany is not what you want to see.
No, it's not at all what you want to see, which, it just says how much of a work in progress this is still. There's still so many things that have to be better. I mean, Syracuse wins this game 102-85. The Orange shot 63% from the field. The Great Danes shot 45% from the field. Well, Syracuse won this game because they shot the ball better than UAlbany. It was that simple.
And free throws this time hurt the Great Danes.
Oh, yeah.
11 for 19. But turnovers were also a big issue for Syracuse. 11 when only 5 to UAlbany. And you look at, steals, 9 for the Great Danes, 1 for the Orange. It's because of the score, you don't really see it, or you can't really tell, but this defense is a genuine concern.
It is, although I do think a part of those high turnover numbers and also a reason why both these teams scored so many points is the pace of play was really high today. That's something that Adrian Autry talked about a lot at the beginning of the season. He kept saying, oh, you know what, you should expect for this team to give up a lot of points because we're going to be, running up and down a lot more, which is the truth, but still the defense has to be good. But there were a couple of moments in this game where they pushed the pace and it really worked. And they, for some reason, weren't really doing it at the start of the year. There was one play in particular in the second half where Chris Bell was just left all alone at the front of the floor because someone chucked the ball all the way down to him. They were playing with pace, and sometimes those lead to turnovers, but also sometimes those lead to buckets. And I thought that when they actually played with pace and with energy, they looked pretty good on the offensive end.
And the assist numbers were also phenomenal. 23 of them for SU. The previous high was 19 all the way back against Youngstown State. They were passing the ball, and that's why, they weren't just making shots. They were finding guys. Jaquan Carlos showed great vision with, 12 assists today?
12 and 12. I mean, he had 12 points, too. Without a doubt, his best game in Orange.
Oh, I mean, it's not even close. Before the Tennessee game, his highest point total was 4. He has 7, 8, and now 12, and 12 assists. That's something we haven't seen out of Jaquan Carlos, or really out of the Syracuse team, is the ability to pass the ball. The alley-oop to Donnie Freeman, the alley-oop to Jair Davis. We have not seen this high-flying type of offense and athleticism out of Syracuse all season.
Yeah, especially with Jaquan Carlos. If he couldn't dominate like this against a team like UAlbany, then I would have just been done on him. I mean, I've already been saying that there's no point in starting him if he can't move the ball. If he couldn't do it against a team of this caliber, then what was the point of playing him? Because he was at Hofstra before, and he was good at Hofstra. He makes the leap up okay. If he's then playing ACC teams, he's struggling. If he couldn't dominate against a team like UAlbany, then all things were lost. But the fact that he was actually able to look like himself today, I think really, I don't know how much you can take away from it moving forward, but it just made me happy that he looked like he was comfortable out there, and he looked like a bit of his old self against Hofstra.
Right.
At Hofstra.
Do you guys think that Jaquan Carlos can keep this performance or this type of level of play going? Give us your thoughts, 315-443-2011, or text us, 315-556-3929. It's the double overtime up until 11 o'clock with Adam Gotkin. I'm Skylar Wilkes. And you're right, it shouldn't have taken, though, Adam, it shouldn't have taken this long for Jaquan Carlos, a very talented player who has a lot of really solid intangibles. It shouldn't have taken him Game 9 to look like his old self.
No, not at all. If you want to get analytical about it, usage percentage, which is pretty indicative of what the name is. It's how often you're used and plays on the floor. Coming into this game, Carlos's usage percentage was 12%, which is in the 9th percentile of all college basketball players. That is a very, very low usage percentage. As your point guard, should probably be pretty high. Today, he actually was getting involved. That usage percentage was up to 21%. And it just felt like offensively there was an emphasis to really give him the ball and get him going. Autry isn't necessarily a king when it comes to set plays, but there were some where it felt like there was a purpose and intent behind what Carlos was doing, which we hadn't seen before, but today we saw it.
And it's interesting when you talk about usage rate, Adam, is because minutes-wise, especially since J.J. Starling got injured, I mean, he's been playing almost every single minute of every single game.
37 tonight.
37. That's 9 more than the next closest player, which was Elijah Moore, who didn't have nearly the same amount of production. 6 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. Jaquan Carlos, obviously, we said he's not going to give you 12 and 12 every single game. But if he can give you at least half of that a game, maybe at least pushing towards double digit in the points category, you can live with that.
Yeah, you can. Now, because we're talking Carlos, I got to bring this up. Kyle Cuff in the first half was excellent offensively. He had 10 points. He led the game in scoring at halftime. And he only played 12 minutes after scoring 10 points in the first half. He didn't get in until 8 minutes had gone by in the second. I didn't understand that at all. Like Kyle Cuff scores 10 points in the first half. He's not necessarily the most talented player, but he got it going, and then he just didn't play in the second half. It didn't really matter that much. UAlbany wasn't really coming back into the game, but still, I didn't understand how even Carlos was okay, but Kyle Cuff was playing great. How did you not keep him in? He was knocking down his threes. He had 2 threes from the right wing in the first half. He just made. I mean, this team has not been able to shoot from deep all year. Kyle Cuff was doing it. Yes, they did not make a 3 last game, and yet Kyle Cuff starts making his shots in the first half, and he didn't get in the second. Yes, Carlos was playing well, but still, this is something that we've talked about here at WAR all season so far, is the rotation. That just made absolutely no sense to me rotation-wise.
No, because you had mentioned that, he doesn't play a whole lot, but who cares if you have a guy who doesn't play a whole lot and he suddenly comes in and shoots the ball, lights out, and is leading the team in points.
Play him then. Yes.
Keep playing him. He scored. Jaquan Carlos had a season high in 12 points. Jaquan Carlos hadn't had more than 10 points all season long. Kyle Cuff, especially when this is a team that has really inconsistently shot the 3 ball, that is Kyle Cuff's specialty. That is really what he is on this roster to do. Again, you mentioned it, hasn't played a whole lot this season, but now he's really starting to play himself into a legitimate role in this rotation. He only played another 6 minutes in that second half. He had 10 points in 6 minutes, didn't score again when he came back in the second half. I feel like, Adam, you're just hurting his momentum and his confidence there by sitting him for almost half of the second half.
Absolutely. I think back to the Tennessee game when Elijah Moore goes off in the first half and led the entire game in scoring, and then doesn't start the second. And he's kind of fallen off a little bit the last 2 games.
I'd say more than kind of.
Yeah, he has fallen off the last 2 games. When you have a hot player, you got to put him on the floor. You got to keep him on the floor. And that's what I don't understand right now with Autry, is why aren't you keeping your hottest players on the floor mid-game? I just don't get it.
And it's funny because you look at previous games where Jaquan Carlos has struggled, and yet there is no pulling him at all. He's out there to be out there. There's no quick trigger from Adrian Autry, yet with these younger guys who have less experience, Moore, Cuff, he's quick to pull them right away. See, that comes from the Jim Boeheim tree, where you have very little patience for inexperienced players, and you don't let them develop. Benny Williams was another great example. He couldn't do one mistake, and he's gone. And yet, you have these other experienced guys who are doing more damage to your team. Again, this is not pertaining to necessarily today with Jaquan Carlos, but in previous games where he is struggling and you just leave him out there. Eddie Lampkin, even in games where he has not necessarily been great, you leave him out there. Lucas Taylor, realistically, newer to Syracuse, but not a new player. He has been one of the most underwhelming and, quite frankly, irrelevant players on this team.
He was tonight.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. I mean, this is a player who's really solid at Georgia State, was supposed to contribute, and he has been a near non-factor.
Yeah, he has been. We got a text in from Jim from Camillus asking about Naheem McLeod, and I think this fits perfectly into our conversation. He's asking, is McLeod hurt? Why do you not give him more time? Yeah, if you're giving all these guys minutes and you are mixing it up the way that Autry has been, where it doesn't really matter if someone's playing well, he'll put someone else in. He's not just going to keep that consistent lineup in. Why do you not try it, Naheem McLeod? If you're not going to keep Kyle Cuff in when he's playing so hot, why not also try Trance Westry? Like, why are they continually going to Jaquan Carlos to keep him in? Because me, when I saw that text about McLeod, I straight went to Chance Westry. And why does he only play 3 minutes in this game? Like, that's what I don't get at all. I don't get these rotations right now.
It's a great point, Adam. It's a great point. Jim, if you want to join in on the conversation with Jim, call in 315-443-2011 or text us like Jim did, 315-556-3929. It's the double overtime. Skylar Wilkes here with Adam Godkin up until 11 o'clock, breaking down this 102-85 win for Syracuse over UAlbany. The reason why Naheem McLeod is not in is simply because he doesn't need to be.
Yeah.
You really don't need him to play. He's hasn't shown a whole lot when he's been on the floor this year, and it realistically wasn't that large of a margin where, he comes in and potentially starts getting outplayed, and now UAlbany's closer and closer into the game. Chance Westry, though, is a great point. He's starting to get his feet under him and starting to play a little bit more and get more minutes. This type of game where, at the same time, even though it was close at him, it never felt out of reach. Like, you never felt, similar to how our friend Alex Ramol talked about during the UConn game, despite the closeness, you never felt like Syracuse was going to let it slip away.
Yeah, UConn football. Yes,
right, yes. UConn football. Yes, UConn football. That was a one-score game, but it felt like the Orange were in control the entire time. And especially in the second half, this is how this game felt.
Yeah.
Where you could live with Chance Westry going in and getting double-digit minutes.
Yeah, this is something that I thought about a couple games ago during it was Tennessee when they were getting blown out of, if Chance Westry doesn't play now, is he ever going to play? If he doesn't play when you're up by a comfortable amount in the second half against UAlbany, I have no reason to think that he's ever going to play, because you can't put him in big minutes against Georgetown out of nowhere. You sure as heck can't play him against Maryland. And then there's only one more game against a non-power conference team this season, and that's Bucknell. This was the game to get Westry's feet wet in consistent minutes, in minutes that kind of mattered a little bit, because I do think it's important to get him in when you're only up by 10, and it's not completely, over with 2 minutes to go. I think it would have been really important to play him in a game like this. And I just don't understand, I'll keep going back to it, why Jaquan Carlos played 37 minutes in this game. When Kyle Cuff was playing so well in the first half, why did he finish with only 12 minutes? Why does Chance Westry not play more? I just don't get it, because even though Carlos had 12 and 12, he also had 3 turnovers. And watching it, I wasn't blown away by him.
And that's the thing. Like, the 12 points, watching that game, I mean, half of them came at the free throw line.
Yes.
Half of watching that game, you're like, he had 12 points.
Because you're like, he had 12 assists? I didn't even realize that he had 12 assists watching.
That is a little bit more believable. To me, the points, early in that first half, he picked it up in the second half, got a lot of free passes to the basket with layups and used his speed. But in that first half, he just looked totally inept offensively. And that's really what he has for most of the season. And again, this is not a knock on Jaquan Carlos as a player, because his reputation at Hofstra precedes him. He is a talented point guard and should be the starting point guard of this team. But the inconsistencies and the lack of scoring, right? Especially now that J.J. Starling's out, you've had guys step up, and Jaquan Carlos, quite frankly, from a scoring standpoint, hasn't been that guy.
I see a quote from the press conference right now on our WAER Sports Twitter account about Kyle Cuff. From Coach Autry. It says, Kyle gave us a big lift today. Every time he has come in, he gives us a spark. Like, we saw that today. Today was the proof of what Kyle Cuff can do. And I think it's proof that when Carlos isn't playing his best, Cuff has to play. He was at Kansas before. Let's not forget national champion, right? Kyle Cuff. Let's not forget he's got a ring. He's a talented enough basketball player where they should believe in him to play. And he proved today that he can make his shots. He can make his threes. I think that maybe the number one thing I took away from this game that I didn't necessarily know before is that Kyle Cuff has to be playing more when other things aren't going this team's way, because this isn't the first time that he's brought energy.
No, that's kind of what he does. And I think that's part of that spending a lot of time on the bench, right? That's kind of your role, is you provide a lot of energy. So now it just translates to the court, where obviously he's a capable scorer. You saw it tonight with his 10 points, 2 3-pointers. You translate his bench energy onto the floor, and it creates a lot of momentum for your team. I mean, this Syracuse team just looked better with Kyle Cuff on the floor because of his, if you will, 3-and-D type of playing style.
It's something that we heard about Elijah Moore was, does he need to start when he can bring this massive lift off the bench? That's something that I don't necessarily agree with, of not starting a player because you need energy off the bench. But I think that this team has energy off the bench, even if Moore starts like he did today. And it's crazy to say that's Kyle Cuff. He's the energy, right?
Absolutely.
I think he has to be at this point.
And another guy who plays more composed, isn't necessarily outgoing, but has just been really impressive since his arrival in the 3-1-5, and that's Jair Davis. Tonight, 15 points, 7 for 7 from the field, Adam. Jair Davis, second start of the season, and he was perfect.
Yeah, I could tell first possession that this was going to be a Jair Davis game. First possession of the game, he's inside, gets a little pump fake, and then scores easily. He was size-wise pretty similar to UAlbany down low, a very small Great Danes team, but he was just so much more talented, and it was so obvious. Teams like UAlbany is exactly who Jair Davis dominated against when he was at Delaware. Like, these are the guys that he should be beating, and it was obvious from the first possession that he could do that, and he proved it today.
And what I think is even more impressive to that, Adam, is that it's not really just against these mid-major 20 against Notre Dame. It hasn't necessarily mattered a whole lot who he is playing against. 11 points against Texas. He is consistently produced in some way, shape, or form, and that's something that you can't necessarily say the same about Eddie Lampkin. And that's what Brian on YouTube said is, I want to love Eddie Lampkin. I'd gladly tolerate 1 to 2 more personal fouls from him for 3 or 4 more block shots.
Yeah, he's not aggressive.
Like Albany,
he's not
at all.
Yeah,
it's looking like one of those gassed offensive linemen where you're kind of you're moving down the field and you're just kind of waiting for a break in the action.
You can see. I don't want to be mean here, but for those of you watching on the YouTube, I can kind of explain it. His shoulders when he runs are going up and down. He's like swaying back and forth because he's a bigger guy and he just doesn't look fully healthy. And we heard about his back issues earlier in the year, and he just looks like he's really, really just struggling to get around on the floor. And I wonder if that plays a big part in the lack of aggression, is he's just tired out there. I mean, look, he played 25 minutes tonight, and he had a decent stat line, 6, 8, and 5, but he could have done so much more, and I feel like he should have been dominating down low.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like you're not necessarily you want to see more out of him, and it would stink if he was injured because of his capabilities on the floor. I mean, his passing is undeniable. 3 assists. That was the first time he had an assist since all the way back against Texas. He went 3 straight games without an assist, but he only has 3 blocks on the year. And you mentioned the undersized UAlbany team. It's 6'11", his size and weight. Eddie Lampkin should have had at least a double-double.
Can he get blocks, though? He can't really jump. We joked about this when watching the game.
He doesn't even do the tip.
He doesn't do the tip as the center because he's a bigger guy. He can't really jump that high. Like, what is the peak of Eddie Lampkin?
You're right. What is the seal?
Because if he can't dominate against smaller guys and against bigger guys in the ACC, I don't think that he's going to be able to necessarily be at the same skill level as them. Like, against smaller guys, he can show off his skill with his great passing and some of his moves inside. When he's playing bigger ACC defenders, what is he going to do?
And that's the thing. 6'6" Justin Neely for UAlbany, 11 rebounds. He out-rebounded a guy who has 5 inches on him. There's no excuse for that. Eddie Lampkin should be dominating the boards. And realistically, every Power 5 team, I should say, has a big man similar to Eddie Lampkin, at least from a height standpoint. But these mid-major teams, you just really expect more out of a talented player. And rebounding, he had 12 against Colgate, 13 against Youngstown State, 8 against Texas Tech, and then no more than 5 in any other game. Like, he had 3 against Lemoyne.
Yeah. I mean, it's the speed. There's so much of rebounding, of course, the size, but also when the ball bounces off the rim, you got to know where it's going.
And that's the same thing. Going back to the previous question from Jim, why Naheem McLeod isn't out there, it's a similar thing where Naheem McLeod is simply not quick enough and nimble enough and elusive, athletic enough to be out there on the floor competing with at least Power 5 teams. I think he probably could have held his own against UAlbany tonight, but those are 2 very unathletic, if you will, centers that, I know they're more old school centers from back in the 80s and 90s. Now everyone is more athletic. They can stretch the floor, and I just don't see McLeod and Lampkin doing that.
I mean, if we think about Lampkin, and of course he's wearing that 44, we remember after the Notre Dame game, Derek Coleman going after him.
Yes.
And saying that he was watering down the legacy of 44. Like, that's what Derek Coleman was. He was an athletic big guy who could dominate down low, but he could also drive from the top. Like, I think that's something that Syracuse is missing. Is, they have it in Donnie Freeman, but he's more of a stretch four. I think they're missing a athletic big guy who can also hold his own and really be able to stand strong when he's getting beat down low, because Freeman isn't there.
You're right.
They need a guy who can at least stay strong, like Jesse Edwards a little bit.
I was just about to say, he reminds me of former West Virginia player Jesse Edwards.
Former West Virginia player.
Yeah, that's exactly another guy that Jim Boeheim had a very short leash for, and then suddenly the guy becomes a good basketball player, and he's in love with him.
But he was quicker, and that's why he was able to get the blocks.
Exactly, and that's why he didn't need to stretch the floor, because he was such a dominant presence down low. Syracuse keeps trying to they tried to replicate Jesse Edwards with Naheem McLeod, miserably failed.
Yes.
Now you're trying to not even replicate Jesse Edwards, but bring another big man in there, and Eddie Lampkin is a different type of player, but you need almost another Jesse Edwards.
Yeah, because I don't think that. I was always a little bit confused by bringing Eddie Lampkin into this team, because the identity that Autry has always talked about is speed and pushing the ball up the floor, and I don't fully understand how Lampkin ever fit into that. And I think that we see that in this game especially. Like, they want to push the pace. He can't be out there if they want to push the pace.
No, you're not going to see him running on a fast break and getting an alley-oop from Jaquan Carlos.
Absolutely not. He's halfway up the floor by the time they score on a fast break. And I think that's why the fast break points weren't there at the start of the season. I mean, today they had 16. They should have more if they want. If this is a team that wants to be playing fast, you should have more,
especially
than just 16 fast break points against a team like UAlbany.
And especially with the other athletes that are out on the floor.
Great athletes.
I mean, everyone. You talk about Chris Bell, Jair Davis, Donnie Freeman is a really great athlete. He showcased it today. And even the other freshmen in Elijah Moore, Peter Majstorovic, those guys have
They
shown,
can run.
Right. They can run, and they can contribute to this team. That's something that we saw tonight, and we'll talk a whole lot more about when we come back here on the Double Overtime.
Hi, this is David Gans, host of the Grateful Dead Hour, the weekly audio postcard from the wide musical world of America's best-loved band. Join me for the Grateful Dead Hour Saturday afternoons at 5 on WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, that's all empty and I don't care. So my baby down by the river.
Beale Street Caravan brings the sound of Memphis to an international public radio audience. Listen to concert performances from masters of blues, soul, and rock and roll. The program is hosted by Pat Mitchell-Worley and Kevin Cubbins and feature segments from industry insiders such as Jerry Wexler and Bob Porter. Tune in to Beale Street Caravan Saturday evenings at 6 o'clock on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
The beauty of jazz is any time is a great time to experience new aspects of the musical genre and appreciate its rich history. WAER's HD2 channel is a dedicated source for jazz music 24 hours a day. Available to stream at WAER.org or on your HD radio. WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Start your Sunday mornings off right with Sunday Morning Gospel from 6 to 8 a.m. right here on WAER. Hosted by Cora Thomas, the program features some of the best local and national gospel artists. You'll hear everyone from Daryl Coley to the Brooklyn Tabernacle Choir to the Winans family. More information is available online at WAER.org. Join us Sunday mornings from 6 to 8 a.m. for Sunday Morning Gospel on 88.3 FM WAER.
With so much going on, it can be hard to keep up with who's doing what and why. I'm Aisha Roscoe, host of Weekend Edition Sunday, letting you know whether it's news from across the country and the world, or a deep conversation about a novel, movie, or music, we got you. Grab your coffee or your earbuds and tune in to Weekend Edition from NPR News.
Sunday morning from 8 to 10 on WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
the timeline, gets to the far wing, and has a screen from Freeman. Carlos lobs inside to Freeman, who jams it home! Donnie Freeman with the electrifying slam!
Welcome back into the double overtime here on WAER after Syracuse's 102-85 win over UAlbany. I'm Adam Gotkin here with Skylar Wilkes. We're taking you up until 11 p.m., so still an hour and 15 minutes to go after this Orange win, and impressive once again. The freshman, Donnie Freeman, especially. Didn't start today, but it did not matter. 24 points, 8 rebounds, a plus 13 in just 23 minutes at home. Or how impressed were you with Donnie Freeman? You can give us a call at 315-443-2011. You can also text us at 315-556-3929. Interact with us on Twitter or YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. Skylar, Donnie Freeman didn't get the start. It didn't matter. He was spectacular again.
No, it didn't matter at all, which I think a lot of people were probably concerned coming in that, oh no, Donnie Freeman's not starting. What went wrong? Some personal issues. You got out there, played 23 minutes, and was sensational. See, that's what you kind of expect from a guy like Eddie Lampkin. Not necessarily a 24-8 stat line, but I think when it doesn't matter who you play against. Donnie Freeman just continues to get better and better and better. And the thing that impressed me the most, Adam, is the 4 for 4 from three-point land. If you look at the stat, he hadn't made more than one three-pointer all year. He hadn't even made a three-pointer since the Texas game. Comes out, goes 4 for 4, and the team didn't even make 4 three-pointers last game. So Donnie Freeman, who I don't necessarily think of as a stretch, can necessarily shoot the ball that well, has come in and maybe becomes a legitimate three-point option.
You know, as a DMV guy myself, as someone who had the pleasure of watching Donnie Freeman many times in high school, I was lucky enough to see him play when he was at St. John's before he went to IMG Academy. This was always a part of Donnie Freeman's game. He was really skinny back in high school, like very, very, very skinny, and he was always a guy who was going to try and break you down with the dribble. He really has become much more of a post-inside player over the last 12 to 18 months, I feel like, ever since he went to IMG Academy. So I wouldn't say it necessarily surprised me to see him make 4 threes and shoot 4 threes. I think that the three-point shooting with him is now just confidence. I think he's fully believing in himself that he can do it, because he was a good three-point shooter in high school at IMG and at St. John's. But now I think he has the confidence, and he was just looking like he knew that he could dominate, and he did, which I think is so important with players like him, especially against teams like UAlbany.
You hit it on the nose, because if you look at even the games he struggled, right, in Brooklyn, he wasn't particularly impressive. 9 points against Texas, 5 against Texas Tech, although he did have 13 rebounds. Since then, 23 against Cornell, 10 against Tennessee, 20 and 11 against Notre Dame. There was a lot of hype going into the season around Donnie Freeman. Forget about the highest recruit since Carmelo Anthony. Obviously, that's impressive, but it's really, this guy could be a first-round pick. And early on, you didn't necessarily see it, but now he is becoming extremely impressive. If he can make his shots, too, I mean, that adds a second dimension to it. He's up to 14 points a game now, Adam. That's second on the team, more than Chris Bell, who exclusively basically shoots three-pointers. And J.J. Starling gone, that's a big absence. Donnie Freeman has been the guy to step up in Starling's absence.
Oh, yeah. Our good friend Ron from Canastota was impressed by Freeman tonight. Thank you for texting us, Ron. If you want to text us at home, then you can. Our number, 315-556-3929. You can also call us, 315-443-2011. Ron was especially impressed with the effort from Freeman. I think that's something that we always are seeing from him, and we always know that we're going to see from him. Against Notre Dame, he even got into it a little bit, got the technical foul for pushing someone after he got pushed, and I think that that's something that we are seeing more and more, not just his confidence, but his energy and excitement to just be out there, and he looks like a freshman who's having fun. I think at the start he was timid overall. His personality is starting to show a little bit, I feel like.
And the thing with that is, Syracuse not having necessarily the ideal start to the season, some uninspiring losses, some uninspiring wins too. So it can be hard for freshmen to go all in, especially highly touted freshmen where realistically he had any option, any school he could have wanted, he could have gone to. And so you come in, you buy into Adrian Autry, things aren't necessarily translating to wins, but you're still going out there, you're giving full effort, and you're contributing. And it says a lot about who Donnie Freeman is as a player and who he is as a person. A lot of people say, oh, it's UAlbany. But this is not a one-time thing. Maybe from beyond the arc so far it is, but from this type of production and overall contribution level, this is nothing new to Donnie Freeman. And especially with J.J. Starling off the floor and Eddie Lampkin kind of being phased out of the offense the way he was early on tonight, I only see it going up from here for Donnie Freeman.
Yeah, and this is a season right now in college basketball where freshmen are dominating. So I think this is something that we need to see more and more of from Freeman. You look around the country, you see what Cooper Flagg is doing at Duke, what Dylan Harper and Ace Bailey are doing at Rutgers, Derek Queen at Maryland, Boogie Fland at Arkansas, someone who Syracuse was into, Liam McNeely at UConn. There are so many unbelievable freshmen right now in college basketball. If you look at recent mock drafts, Freeman has fallen out of the first round. We were talking about a potential lottery pick. He's starting to now fall out of the first round. I think if you look around the country at the other freshmen who are dominating, today's game is even more proof that Freeman needs to play 30-plus minutes a night. And I know he didn't start tonight. Red Autry said we on social media, WAER Sports tweeting it out, that Autry said that it was because he wasn't feeling well, which I guess you can say maybe is why he didn't play as much tonight. I don't understand why he doesn't start and then goes in 6 minutes later when he's not feeling well. But still, I think tonight's game is even more proof that he needs to be playing at least 30 minutes a night. I don't care he's a freshman. Freshmen are dominating around the country right now in college basketball.
No, his class should not matter whatsoever.
No.
He is the best player on the floor. And to be honest, it's pretty undisputable.
Do you think he's going to get picked in the draft? Do you think he's coming back to college? At this point...
At this point right now, he's coming back.
Coming into the season, I was 100% he's going to the draft, potential lottery pick.
I didn't believe that.
At this point, I don't think he's leaving.
No. And I don't think he's done enough. I don't know if he would come back to Syracuse. It would make a lot of sense. They have a great incoming freshman class. But yeah, I mean, falling out of mock drafts, he's performing well, but I don't think he's performing well enough to say, yeah, this guy's a legitimate NBA pick. I think you would expect to see him kind of take over more than he has been. And, he's got that Kevin Durant misleading size to him. Mm-hmm. And you imagine he can stretch the floor a little bit. And we just haven't seen that. He isn't as dominant posting up to the basket. There was a play today where he was backing down a defender and turned and almost did it like a fadeaway one-hand shot, which ideally you'd like him to go up strong over the top of the defender and make it. So I think he still needs to grow and develop as a post player. And like I said, we hadn't seen this three-point prowess, if you will, until today. And the new era of basketball is all about guys that can shoot the ball. If Donnie Freeman can continue to showcase his shooting ability, at least on a consistent level, maybe you're talking a day 2 pick, which they do now in the NBA draft, have split into days. So second round pick, that is. But it would make a lot of sense if he came back next year and then became the it guy on this highly publicized roster with Kai and Anthony, draw more exposure to him, and then try to leapfrog his way into the NBA from there.
At home, do you think that Donnie Freeman is a guaranteed draft pick next year? Call us at 315-443-2011. Because, again, as we've been saying here, I don't think that he has. Overall, would you say he's impressed you to the point that has he exceeded expectations this season?
You hear the Carmelo Anthony, you hear all this hype, and obviously Carmelo, that's just unrealistic expectations. Yes. And it's not comparing him to Carmelo Anthony. He's the highest ranked recruit since Carmelo Anthony.
Who was one of the greatest college basketball players of all time.
Right. So I think any time you connect yourself to that name, you're setting yourself up for failure. It's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
I mean, even though he scored 24 points and had 8 rebounds in 23 minutes, I don't know if I necessarily felt like he did.
I was just about to say that.
It doesn't feel like Donnie Freeman is dominating out there.
It doesn't feel like it. You're not watching him and you're like, whoa.
You don't get ESPN posting highlight clips of him or anyone posting highlight clips of him saying, look at this top 10 freshman doing his thing at Syracuse.
Right. Which, theoretically, they wouldn't be wrong for doing. But you're right, Adam. I think that's one of the most true things that, like, you think it, but you don't actually, like, can't put it into words. He has the most, I wouldn't even say it's nonchalant. It's
casual 24 points.
Unimpressive, if you will. Like,
yeah.
Which is funny because obviously it's impressive. But, like, the unimpressive 24 and 8, it's just not flashy.
Yeah.
And
which is surprising because when we heard everyone describe him before the season, and it's how I've always thought of him, it's that he's this athletic unicorn.
And that's why my expectations were so high. Even besides the Carmelo Anthony conversation is the way he was described. The unicorn type of description, you were expecting a not generational, but a, must-see TV type of guy.
Yeah. I think part of that is that what we talked about earlier. I want to see him push the floor more. I want to see, we talked about, a 0.4 a little bit with him as someone who showed that he could shoot today, making 4 threes. I want to see them run the offense through him a little bit more. Have him run up the floor with it after he gets a rebound. Like that aggression. I feel like we need to see that a lot more.
They did that a few times today where he dribbled the ball up the floor, but he was always looking for Jaquan Carlos to pass it off. And I think that's another thing that would help him elevate his stock at the next level is can he dribble, can he control a possession, ball in his hands almost the entire time, take it to the basket, beat his defender, instead of looking for, because that's one of the things you look for, in my opinion, for a generational type talent or someone with that high of regard as an incoming recruit is, can he take the ball himself and kind of take over a game and keep the ball in his hands and keep possession. And if you're looking for your teammate to pass the ball, you're not doing that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I agree. I want to see him try and take over. But, of course, Donnie Freeman, not the only newcomer to this team, not the only freshman to this team, and there's another top 100 freshman on this roster who actually got his first start today, and that's Elijah Moore at home. How did you feel about Elijah Moore's performance? Call in at 315-443-2011 or text us at 315-556-3929. We're here on the double overtime on WAER Syracuse until 11 p.m., so still more than an hour to get your voice heard. For Elijah Moore, a pretty quiet night. 28 minutes, again, his first start, but just 6 points. 3 for 7 from the field. He only attempted 2 3-pointers, didn't make one. As someone who has been begging for him to be put into the starting lineup, he just didn't have it today.
You can't do that. Everyone's calling for you to start. You performed like you should be a starter. And then
plus 24. Best on the team by far. Plus 24. No one else was better than plus 16.
Well, I mean, we were praising Kyle Cuff, and he was at -7. So I wouldn't necessarily take that into account totally.
Wow,
in the
Cuff
plus
was -7.
So Elijah Moore, I mean, this is a freshman player who put up 24 points against a top 5 scoring defense in the entire country. And he was laying it on from 3. I mean, made 5 against Cornell. 19, 24. You're expecting this to maybe not continue at that level because it's unrealistic, but you're not expecting this type of drop-off where he puts up barely 4 against Notre Dame, now 6 against UAlbany. What is happening? Elijah Moore is, I mean, the start was really slow. He barely did anything in his first 5 games, came alive for 2, and now he's back asleep.
I think it's what we just talked about with Donnie. It's that when he really puts his foot on the gas and says, I'm doing this, I'm taking over, I'm going to show you how good I am, then he does it. I think he needs to be shooting more than 2 threes every game.
Oh, of course he does.
And he needs to believe in himself that he can make those shots because he can. And we've seen so many times that he's a pure scorer. He's got to do it. And there needs to be a true emphasis within this offense to get Elijah Moore points. Because he is the best pure scorer on this team. And it's not even close.
I think the thing to me is he's too similar to Chris Bell.
Yeah.
I feel like they're way too similar of a player. So all the reps, like Bell, 18 points tonight. He took 13 shots. It's like all of those reps and the shots that should be going to Elijah Moore are going to Chris Bell instead. It's almost like they can't be on the floor at the same time.
Yeah.
Which is why everyone's saying he should start. Adrian Autry might have been onto something there. You had a great point earlier, Adam, about his inconsistency with rotations. Well, maybe it makes a lot of sense bringing Elijah Moore off the bench so he's not clashing so much with Chris Bell, because you'd say he's the best true scorer on the team, which evidently he's not. It's clearly Donnie Freeman. But
there's different. By pure scorer, I mean you give him the ball and he just does it himself. Well,
but we haven't really I don't know if that's true. I feel like a true scorer, you're a little bit more consistent than that. You would like to see a lot more consistency out of the best true scorer on the team.
Yeah, I mean, you compare him to Chris Bell. I think that Elijah Moore is so much better at getting a bucket himself than Chris Bell is. That's kind of what I mean. Like when I see Elijah Moore at his best, he's able to break someone down off the dribble. We saw him do that against Tennessee a bunch, where he goes quick between the legs, crossover, and then just pulls up and shoots. Like we don't see Donnie Freeman do that. When I think of like a pure scorer, I'm thinking of like Steph Curry just like scoring at his will. And that's what I mean by Elijah Moore. And I think that, as he said, I don't think Chris Bell should be taking 13 shots while Moore should be taking 7.
No, and I get your point that, I mean, Elijah Moore is definitely a more gifted scorer than Chris Bell. That's undeniable.
18 points, by the way, for Bell.
Again, really quiet.
Yeah.
Like really quiet 18 points.
Just all inside, too. Didn't make a single three. That was weird.
Single three, which is another concern. What is Chris Bell who has shown an ability to make 3-pointers, just has decided to stop making them at this point, which is why Elijah Moore, you can't contrast, because now Adrian Autry can keep Elijah Moore on the bench now for the rest of the season because, like I said, they're too similar, or at least the way he wants them to fit into this offense are too similar, which having them on the floor together, at least on a consistent basis, right? Bell 27 minutes, Moore 28 minutes, is not conducive to success.
So what's your dream starting lineup then if everyone is healthy? Is it, can you put Moore at the 3 and run the 3-guard lineup with Starling, Carlos, and Moore, and then have Bell off the bench?
I think I would start Bell because, one, he's a better defender, which isn't saying a whole lot. But Elijah Moore has been really bad defensively as well.
He's also a freshman, though, and that'll just, you got to give him time to get better, I feel like.
Sure, and Adrian Autry did say he has improved, which is good. Chris Bell, though, right now is a better defender. And I don't, kind of like the Jair Davis thing, where I don't mind having a talented player off the, right? Like it's kind of, you have the starting lineup and then you have your finishing lineup. And Elijah Moore doesn't necessarily need to start to contribute. I think you let Chris Bell miss a bunch of threes when he starts, and then he takes a seat, and Elijah Moore comes off the bench and does the exact opposite of Chris Bell and actually scores the basketball.
You know what I just saw from Q Sports Talk about Chris Bell?
What?
This is from Q Sports Talk saying, Chris Bell talked about his mindset today. This is a quote. He said that he's probably been on social media too much and that he did what Kobe and others try to do to break his slump. Watch his own highlights.
What are we supposed to do with that?
Yeah, I like. He's been on social media too much. Well, like,
stop. Like, okay, get off social media.
I just had to bring that up because I think that's absurd.
I mean, that's an absurd excuse.
I know, that's absurd.
Chris Bell, as he is, he should be the leading scorer. Right now, he has a freshman outpacing him in that category.
Yeah.
So let's see now. 18 tonight, a solid outing. Let's see now, Adam, if he is, putting a time limit on his social media. Now he's going to start scoring the ball a little bit more.
Isn't it also kind of funny to get off of social media, but then
go to
YouTube still social media?
It is.
And then you
can watch us on YouTube.
Exactly. I hope everyone does watch us on YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. We've got that up and running this year. You can see our beautiful faces as much as everyone loves to listen to us. You can also see us as well. Another newcomer that we should probably get into before we go to another break, Peter Majstorovic. He played a lot tonight. He had 14 minutes. Plus 16. I know plus minus isn't everything like we just talked about with Cuff and with Moore, but 3 for 4 from the field. He had 5 rebounds. The thing with him is that he looks like a pro out there, and the fact that he's never phased, it feels like he's always doing the right thing. And he's just kind of a calming presence out there.
really great way to describe him. He's not going to fill up the stat sheet every time, right? Like last 2 games, he only played 1 minute against Notre Dame, 11 against Tennessee, didn't score either. But it seems like when he's out there on the floor, that's the other thing. Like, he's not turned the ball over. And basically what I was about to say there, Adam, is when he's on the floor, you feel safe. Like, he's not going to necessarily mess up or do anything wrong. And I think that comes from a background in Europe where you play a mature level of basketball. And Majstorovic, who I don't think many people, including myself, knew much about coming in. He was a late addition to the signing class. I don't think many people saw him being a legitimate contributor. And he's not, like I said, filling up the stat sheet, but he's playing a really valuable role off the bench that I think Adrian Autry needs to consistently roll him out there. Like, there's no reason that you should mix up where you go 11 against Tennessee, 1 against Notre Dame, and then back to 15 against UAlbany. He should be a consistent member of this rotation.
Who does he take minutes away from then? Is it Lampkin?
Yes, absolutely.
I agree. I don't think Eddie Lampkin can be playing any more than he did tonight, which is 25 minutes.
No.
I think you're looking at Lampkin as someone who can play 20 minutes a night at most. Because if he looks tired, and you can tell when he looks tired, then teams just take him out offensively and they blow right by him. Like, you think about DJ Burns last year and what he was able to do at NC State and helping them go all the way to the Final Four. He played a lot of games where he played 16 minutes, 11 minutes, 17, 12, looking through this right now. And I think that's how they have to treat Lampkin.
And he made the most of those minutes.
Yeah, and luckily for Syracuse, just like NC State had on that last year's team that made it to the Final Four, they had guys who could come in. Mohamed Diarra was one of them, Ben Middlebrooks, others. I loved that NC State team, by the way. Just thinking about it. There's so many guys. But they had depth pieces, I should say, behind DJ Burns, just like Syracuse does behind Eddie Lampkin with Majstorovic, and they really have to use, I think, Majstorovic that way. I think, in 4 years, if he stays here, he could be a star. Yeah. Like, we're just seeing the start of him.
And again, very raw, right? Like, coming over from Europe, that can always be a difficult transition, especially with the quickness and
the lifestyle too. You got to remember that this is a guy who lived in France and was playing basically professional basketball, and now he comes to upstate New York in the snow, and he's a college student. Like, that's a transition,
right? Exactly. And I think an important thing to look at, just to show you the kind of intelligence of Peter Majstorovic's game, is he's played almost 40 minutes more than Kyle Cuff and still has less turnovers.
They're different players, though.
They are different players, but Kyle Cuff is basically just a shooter. Like, he is not a primary ball handler where theoretically, like, his turnover numbers don't have to be that high.
No, but I think he tries to move the ball around, and that's where the turnovers happen.
And I think even when you look at Majstorovic earlier in this game where it was a loose ball, he sprints down to the baseline, saves it, and then makes like a really great pass down low for a dunk. That's a high IQ player. I think Majstorovic, like you said, especially with the incoming freshman talent, he's going to continue to grow as a veteran, can be a really fundamental piece of this Syracuse men's basketball team in the coming future.
Yeah, and the effort that he shows is really big. Those 6 points, by the way, a career high for him. So
3 for 4 from the field.
Yeah, he's really starting to get it going. Well, we're not done yet here on the Double Overtime on WAER. We're going to continue on in just a minute. Our reporter, Nathaniel Cunningham, who was in the Dome in the press conference with Adrian Autry, will join us when we come back. Don't go anywhere.
What if you were born lucky, under the most auspicious sign, but everyone around you, they aren't nearly so fortunate? On the next Snap Judgment, the cloak of good fortune. Snap Judgment. Do not miss it.
Sunday morning at 10 on 88.3 FM WAER.
Oh my goodness, if I could get a reindeer, that would be nice.
I'm Jesse Thorne. Celebrate the season with me and certified reindeer lover Jennifer Hudson on the Bullseye Holiday Special.
Sometimes they come and sit in my front yard, so maybe I could collect one of those reindeer.
Plus, we'll hear from Tower of Power, Zach Cherry, and Judy Greer. That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
the Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
Joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at WAER.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Bell takes it down left alley, off the right side of the rim, gets his own miss. The floater from the left low block is good.
Welcome back into the double overtime. Alongside Adam Gotkin, I'm Skylar Wilkes. Call in 315-443-2011. Text us 315-556-3929 or interact with us on Twitter at WAER Sports Talk. And I think you'd really want to do that because we're joined by our reporter, Nathaniel Cunningham, who's in the Dome to see this game go down. SU taking down UAlbany 102-85. Nate, I know you're a Capital Region guy. How did it feel watching your Great Danes go down?
I mean, anytime you get to watch the Great Danes, it's a good day. I don't care what team, what fan, who you're a fan of, anytime you get to watch the Great Danes, it's great. But I mean, the atmosphere inside the Dome, I speaking to our producer a little earlier, and if you'd kind of blindfolded me and, said, hey, what was the atmosphere like? I'd have told you that's probably a mid-tier ACC game that we were watching.
Really?
It was
Wow.
rocking in there, especially on a couple of those slams from Donnie Freeman, a couple of them from Jair Davis. It was loud inside the JMA Dome, even though it looked a little empty at times. So I give Syracuse fans a lot of credit. They filled the Dome.
Oh, that's nice to hear. I mean,
Yeah.
the Cornell game, I think, was one of the lower attendances that we've seen in a very long time. And, I mean, with how things have gone recently, I think that's definitely a
little
solid sign. What about the
20
student section? I think that's always...
Student section was a little thin.
Otto's Army, not great?
Usually. Yeah, per usual.
Were they
Student section-
standing?
There were some. I'll give you this. There were some.
Okay.
Not a lot.
Okay.
Not a lot. But there was some of them. I mean, a little under 20,000 people in there in total. So it was there were quite a bit of people in there.
I'll never forget getting yelled at for standing at one point against NC State, actually, 2 years ago. In the
It doesn't matter.
section.
I think that is the craziest thing in the world. If you're at a basketball game, stand. Prepare to stand for the entire time.
Yes, it was absurd.
Your timeouts, the media timeouts, are for when you sit.
Agreed.
I don't think that's crazy.
Well, Nate, 102-85 was the score here, but it was really a lot closer than the score necessarily indicates. Not that you had any fear that Syracuse was going to lose, but there was a rough start for the Orange, and the Great Danes definitely held their own.
Yeah, no, I don't know if I'd necessarily agree with that. I think that for maybe not for long, but for a good probably 3 or 4 minutes at the beginning of that game, I went, maybe Albany can do this. And, it never really, I'd been saying it, I'm a Capital Region guy. Albany's going to come into the Dome. They're going to take down Syracuse.
No, but those first few minutes
But
were
those
impressive.
first few
Yeah.
minutes, you kind of went this Great Dane squad, if they stay like this, Syracuse is done. That's exactly how it was.
So when was the turning point for you? When did you really think
I
this
think
game
that,
was
yeah, and that's what I was going to get to. And I noticed you guys talked about a couple of those newcomers. There was a play that stuck out in my mind, and it was the Petar Masterovich where he runs down the court and he just dives on the court. And he picks up that 50-50 ball. That, for me, was the moment where I think everybody, especially on Syracuse, went, okay, we actually got to work. Because I think what I noticed, and I don't know why it hasn't clicked for Syracuse yet so far, is that these smaller teams are going to come at you from the jump. They were full court pressing Syracuse from the jump, and it's like the Orange were never seen it before. Why is that now a surprise? Why are you surprised that this team that's projected to lose to you is coming out with a fire underneath her. It didn't make sense. So I was a little annoyed, honestly, watching the first couple minutes. Like, how are you as a Power 5 big-name program not expecting the small squad in UAlbany to put up a little bit of a fight? I'm glad that they figured it out and started doing that themselves. But I was frustrated. I won't lie to you. I was really annoyed.
Yeah, that's what I kept saying after the first couple games of the year, where it was your Lemoyne, Colgate, these local teams. It was like, this means a lot to those teams, and you got to play like it.
Yeah, no, and I think like the Lemoyne game's a perfect example. Like, Lemoyne probably left the Dome after that day with a win.
Yeah,
like you go with a loss on the scorecard. But you just held Syracuse to a 4-point victory.
In your second year in Division I.
Correct. Like, that is a win in any fathom of the book. And if you continuously have these small, local New York schools that are doing that, you can kiss any chance you have in the ACC goodbye. You saw what happened to Notre Dame. Like, and this team looked significantly better than they did there. I still don't think that they beat Notre Dame the way that they played today. I'll be so honest with you.
Even with 6 more three-pointers?
Yeah, I don't think they do. I think the way that they played, the style, the mentality, even after the game, and I think that was the real interesting part, Coach Autry came into the presser not happy.
Has he ever been happy this season?
But you won by 17 points, and he came into the presser upset. And I was very curious because I noticed it during the game that he was yelling at players those last couple minutes. I'm like, why are you frustrated? You're 20-piecing the UAlbany squad right now. And he's like, I just didn't think we played defense well. Okay. You're up 20. Like, you made subs, you put in subs that were like, it's the end of the game. You know, you're clearly winning. You're clearly going to win. You put in subs, and you were frustrated that your subs weren't as good as your starters. That's why they're subs.
Here's where I disagree with you. As I will proclaim myself the #1 Dan Hurley apologist right now, I want a college basketball coach to always be screaming and look like a knucklehead out there.
No, listen, I'm not saying don't be in the game at all times. That is not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that the expectation that Kyle Cuff had was the same expectation that Donnie Freeman and Eddie Lampkin had. And I just don't think that's fair. I don't think Kyle Cuff, a guy that's barely getting 10 minutes a game, that apart from today really hasn't produced, is getting maybe treated the same way that a guy who's expected to go out there and play 30 minutes is.
Do you guys think that Coach Autry had the right to be upset after this win? Call in 315-443-2011. Text us 315-556-3929. Skylar Wilkes with Adam Godkin and our reporter Nathaniel Cunningham after SU's 102-85 win over UAlbany. And Nate, I think it just goes to you talk about the rich history of the program, right? Like, Syracuse, there should be no contest with UAlbany.
Yeah,
it should be close at any point. And while 17 is a satisfying victory, I think you look at it and say it was closer than you want. Like, we want to blow them out of the building.
Well,
like, you want to see your best
I said 20
get
before
in.
the game, that they had to win by more than 20.
Well, so that was another thing that I thought was really interesting was that Syracuse was up 24 with 12 minutes to go. They were up 12 with 6.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, maybe Coach Autry did acknowledge himself after the game, and I give him a ton of credit as a second-year head coach for saying, hey, I just put the wrong guys in at the wrong time. That's on me. I got to make better substitutions. But if he didn't do that, or if they didn't get the message, you're talking about a 1-2 point game down the stretch. And now we're having the same conversation that we had after Lemoyne, the same conversation against Youngstown State, where it's like, why is this team keeping it close against these non-competitive schools?
Just to show you the point, this is the second lowest margin of victory for Syracuse ever in the series against UAlbany. And they hadn't played it since 2012, but you have to go back to 2005, or it was really 2004 when they won by 17 as well. That was the next closest. And then you'd have to go all the way back to the first ever meeting in 1918, which was a 12-point win. So that's the point of Syracuse is used to beating up on UAlbany, and it simply just didn't happen.
No, I think I don't know if there's a seriousness. I don't know if this team doesn't understand it. And I'm so happy that some of the other people in the press conference expressed the importance of this next game against Georgetown. Because I think now it's like, this Georgetown team is a good basketball team. You have to win that game. There are a lot of people, and I imagine, tell me if I'm wrong, if you're a Syracuse fan, could easily lose every single game of the season, but if you beat Georgetown, it was a good season. You know what I mean?
I would really hope that's not the case.
I'd hope so. I'd hope not, too. But, like, beating Georgetown, if you're going to have a bad year, you got to at least beat Georgetown.
Yeah, I'll give you that one. I think that's a better way to say it.
Yeah.
Not they can't win any other games, but you got to at least beat Georgetown.
If you're going to have, like, an under 500 season, one of those wins has got to be Georgetown.
Yes.
If you can't play UAlbany that well,
they haven't played any mid-major team well.
Thank you.
I said this earlier. I don't love that we're classifying this as a mid-major game.
Yeah, you're being too technical, Adam.
Because this is a low-major team. Like mid-major is your Atlantic 10, your Missouri Valley, your good conferences.
In an actual conversation.
No.
Yes.
Adam,
absolutely.
You're crazy. I think it's not the first crazy thing I've heard you say today.
Going back to your point about your reference about Adrian Autry, Nate, what did he say specifically about the defense and, they didn't play good enough defense? Did he give any specifics about what they need to improve or what did go wrong?
Well, so Adrian Autry was Adrian Autry, and he was very vague in his post-game pressers. But he acknowledged, he said, just defensively the last 6, 7, 8 minutes, they didn't do what they needed to do. They needed to be better. And then he said, I tried to change it to a zone to see if it worked. And I picked up on that. I was like, oh, there's the 2-3 zone. And it was working for a little while. They just weren't getting the rebounds. And so then he transitioned to, oh, they need to rebound better. They out-rebounded them by 11, and it's like, when you out-rebound somebody by 11 and you outscore them by, 24 in the paint, I don't know if I necessarily would point at you and say the problem is that you didn't rebound well. Like, you just didn't play good straight-up defense. There was a period in the first half where the man-to-man defense was so good, I quite literally said, this is Bob Ross painting a picture. You could not get, it's poetry in motion. It was, I saw Donnie Freeman get down, 3-point stance, one hand out to the side, one hand in the eyes. It was perfection. He was shuffling, not sliding. It was, and as soon as the ball was kicked, the transitions, the rotations, every man was where they needed to be. You didn't see that in the second half. So Adrian Autry didn't tell you what needed to happen. What needs to happen is this team needs to play 40 minutes of basketball. And they're not. They're playing 30, hoping that they can get a 20-point lead and then let that coast them through the last 10.
You brought up the zone there. Something that I don't understand is why play a 2-3 zone when Eddie Lampkin is in the game. I mean, did you notice that in person? Of it just feels like when especially they're in the zone, he can't keep up?
So Eddie Lampkin is not the most, he's not LeBron James with the athleticism. I think what's fair to say.
That's a nice way to put it, yeah.
What I will say is this. When it comes to his ability to kind of hone that center area, I wouldn't say it's any worse than what we saw last year at Naheem McLeod.
But that's a low bar.
Yeah,
that's a low bar.
Okay, but when the expectation of what we saw last year wasn't... I don't think it's as bad as we think it is. Is it good? No. That is point blank, period. It is not good. But is it bad? I don't think it's inherently bad. I think it's good enough to get by. And I think you have enough of a quick wing presence, quick forward presence to make it work. I just don't think it's make or break in the zone, especially the way that they play it. Because Eddie Lampkin, in a traditional 2-3 zone, if the ball gets to the high post, it's the guard's job to drop down, and then one of the forwards will usually pinch. In this 2-3 zone, and I don't know why Adrian Autry does it, probably because Eddie Lampkin can get left on an island, is that he pulls Eddie up, and it almost becomes a 2-1-2.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't mind it, because it's then even if they get the ball to the low post, you have your two athletic forwards there that are good at rim protecting, whether it's Donnie or Jair.
So basically, they're having to adapt the zone because their center isn't athletic enough to actually handle the zone himself.
Yeah, if you want to call it that, but like, who's the last center that Syracuse has had that's exceptionally played the 2-3 zone well?
Jesse Edwards.
Jesse Edwards had a how big of wingspan where he could like just like
7'4"?
Jesse Edwards' wingspan in comparison. I said this, Eddie Lampkin, when you're standing next to him,
Would McLeod not have a longer wingspan than Jesse Edwards?
7'5" for Jesse Edwards.
But Naheem McLeod, it's that first step. So like, I think it's a mixture of what you're saying.
Okay.
It's not individually one. Like, I think if Eddie Lampkin doesn't have the quick first step, and neither does Naheem McLeod, which is why Naheem can't do what Jesse Edwards did. But Jesse Edwards has the wingspan over Eddie. Like, I think if Eddie Lampkin had the wingspan that Jesse Edwards had, you would see him not have to come up as much.
But what about the speed part of it? Is that not like the...
It's not the entire reason that he comes up. It's more so that, like, again, we saw it a couple times tonight on a couple of blocked shots at the rim from Donnie and Jair, where they just, like, came up behind the guy on the low post and just swatted it down. Like, that's the reason that you have those guys there, is because they have that reach and the ability to do. Jair's got sneaky long arms. I don't know if that's like, I think that's why he doesn't shoot the ball that much, because his arms are so long, excuse me. So yeah, I don't think it's like, I don't know if there's, I don't think Eddie Lampkin being in that 2-3 zone is a bad thing. I would not play it for more than 5 minutes.
Yeah.
I heard you guys talking about how long he should be on the court. I don't know if he necessarily should be on the court for really much longer than 5 minutes, but I think like this team has the facilities to make those subs quick and have him come in for 5 and sit for 2 and do that.
What do you guys think Eddie Lampkin's minutes should look like? Give us a call, 315-443-2011, or text us, 315-556-3929. Of course, interact with us on Twitter and YouTube at WAER Sports Talk. With Adam Godkin, our reporter, Nate Cunningham, Skylar Wilkes here after Syracuse took down UAlbany 102-85. We'll be with you for just over a half an hour more, up until 11 o'clock. And Lampkin, Nate, we talked extensively about it. I don't want to say it's a conditioning thing, but I feel like at this, like, I know he's a grad student, he's been in college for a while, but realistically, as a college age kid or a student, you shouldn't really have to have a minutes like where your team can't play you the whole time. Like, you shouldn't have to worry about how many minutes he plays.
Yeah, I think to some extent. I think the value that Eddie Lampkin has is not putting up 15 and 10 a game. I think Eddie Lampkin, and I know the numbers, like, because I'm looking at him, the numbers disagree with me. He had a +2 today. Like, he really wasn't all that valuable. And through the first half, he was honestly, I watched him get out-rebounded by a 6'4" guard today.
I mean,
like,
really had 11 rebounds, and he's 6'6".
Yeah, like, that's not good.
So what do you think his role should be?
But I think, and I've said this since the beginning, I think Eddie Lampkin very well could be DJ Burns 2.0. Maybe not as good, maybe not, on the level NCAA tournament DJ Burns, but I think what you got out of DJ Burns, the ability to pass, the ability to draw defenders in, if you leave Eddie Lampkin in one-on-one against a traditional forward, you're not going to have success. And I think this is where Donnie Freeman comes into play. Because I think those two on the court together can be elite.
Freeman and Lampkin?
Yes. I think if you look at the two of them and you go, who's the center, who's the forward? No one on aliens from Mars would tell you Eddie Lampkin is the center and Donnie Freeman's the forward. But I think if you swapped those roles, not for long, but just for a little bit, you've forced Donnie down low. Maybe he picks up a bigger defender. You then allow Eddie to kind of work his way into the paint. Because Eddie's kind of got some like sneaky good dribble moves. Not like, he's going to break somebody's ankles. But he can make his way from the three-point line into the paint and then let the post do the work. If he can do that, then you get Donnie on a slower guy. And I watch Donnie a lot just beat players with their first step. Like, that's a 1-2 that if you can get a mismatch with the two of them, who are similar in at least height size, you could see success there. I think so.
Here's my issue with that. This is what Skylar and I were talking about earlier isn't the one thing that can take Donnie Freeman to the next level his athleticism, and that he can be this unicorn. Like, don't you want him? I want him running up and down the floor a little bit more. If you do that, does that not worry you that you kind of lose that and you limit him?
I'm not saying have him run block to block.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is just get him in a situation where his matchup is better, because I think when you're going forward to forward or forward to guard, Donnie Freeman is only ever getting guarded by players that are quicker or more athletic than him, because he's listed at 6'9". He stands more probably at around 6'10", 6'11", with shoes on or whatever. He's a tall guy. He gives me very KD-esque at vibes at times.
What, with the misleading height?
Not yes, with the misleading
yes.
height, but also just like with the stature and the way that he handles himself and he plays the game. But I think more importantly with that is like, if you were to get KD on a center, if you were to have Joel Embiid or Nikola Jokic or whoever, like Kevin Durant's going to blow by. He's going to use that athleticism you're talking about. So I'm saying I don't think it's necessarily about putting Donnie Freeman in the center position, but how do you get Donnie Freeman use the fact that he is taller to force centers to come to him instead? Because I saw a lot. How many times did we see today Jaquan Carlos, Eddie Lampkin pick and rolls? What if you did an off-ball Freeman-Lampkin roll?
Yeah, just try and mix it up.
Even if it doesn't get you anything, even if it's just a traditional corner to high post, like nothing special, down screen pin, they switch. Donnie gets the ball at the high post. Now he's got a 7-foot center on his back. He two-step anywhere. He can euro, float. Like he has that ability. And then if he for some reason gets stopped, well, guess what? Now you got Eddie running towards the low block on a 6'9" forward, and he can post up anybody with his size.
I think if we saw that kind of off-ball movement at Syracuse, people would be rushing to Castle Court right now, and people would be...
That's true.
That's something that we just don't see.
Well,
I mean, we don't see those like sets offensively that would have that happen.
That's another thing that's really frustrating, is that Albany came out with sets.
The offense looks really not totally, especially not today as much, but stagnant. Like it just looks like they don't really have a real identity.
You ever seen the movie Coach Carter?
I've seen it on TikTok, basically.
Okay.
I've watched the clips. I've never seen the full thing.
Okay, so in Coach Carter, and I love this movie, but in Coach Carter, Samuel L. Jackson, or Coach Carter himself, like he does not teach offense, but the team just runs and they teach defense. And all they do their first couple games is play their motion offense. That reminds me of Syracuse so much.
Oh, yeah.
It's like there is no intention to actually have an offense. It's pick and roll, somebody come up, and just hope and open shots there.
It's a little bit better than the Buddy Boeheim offense, where it was literally ISO every single time. He either passes it off or takes like a contested step
Buddy
back.
Boeheim made a Final Four.
No, I understand. But again,
this team's nowhere close to being.
No, but it's a similar type of offense where it's, there is no. You don't watch that offense and be like, wow, what brilliance.
Yeah, no, I agree.
It's stagnant.
Well, I think another thing too that Coach Autry said was the ability of the team to move in the transition. And I unfortunately ran out of time, and I really wish I got to ask him about that. Do you think I wonder if he thinks the transition is more difficult because he doesn't have JJ anymore? And you can see in the numbers, he's rotating his forwards thoroughly, but not with his guards, probably because he doesn't trust Kyle Cuff and Chance Westry hasn't played in 2 years, that he doesn't have substitutes to keep these guys fresh to allow them to run. But look what happens when they ran today, even with the forwards.
It feels like point guards aren't that hard to... Maybe good point guards are hard to come by, but the fact that they really only have 4 guards and one of them is Chance Westry, I feel like they should have added a little bit more depth to that position, because Jaquan Carlos playing 37 minutes. He's been running, he's going to...
I just don't think they saw J.J. Starling, and this is really, not good to say, but it's I don't think they saw J.J. Starling getting injured for a month.
Oh, I'm sure they
and
did,
it's
or they didn't want to think about it, but
they put all their chips in one basket. They addressed their center problem, right? And now they're kind of biting themselves in the butt, because not to say they would, but what if they didn't go get Jair Davis and they got another point guard. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like I think they overloaded
like
the
realistically,
concern.
right? Like Lucas Taylor could have been another point guard.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Forget he's on the team.
Exactly.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I honestly, until I saw him warming up, I genuinely was like, who is that?
He started the last 2 games.
I said that.
He did, yeah.
And this is meant no disrespect to Lucas Taylor.
No. He looked good today. He did.
Performed. He was really good at Georgia State. I think the reason why we keep, quote unquote, ragging on him is because the expectations were higher. People saw him come in from what he did last year at Georgia State.
Double-digit scorer, yeah.
Right, double-digit scorer. You were expecting a little bit more of a contributor, and he just seems to kind of now be lost in the shuffle.
So I've been posing this question over the past couple days, really since the Notre Dame game, but back to Tennessee as well. How much of this is Lucas Taylor and, Jaquan Carlos and Jair Davis's fault, and how much of it is Adrian Autry's fault? Is it the fault of a guy who doesn't have a true definition of his scheme? And the reason I say that is because in the presser today, a reporter asked him, how has your coaching style changed? His response was to then go, we lost J.J. Starling, the team has changed. He said it a lot longer than that, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I was kind of like, you got asked a question about you and proceeded to say your team roster looks different, so the team acts different. And then I give credit to the report. I don't remember who it was exactly. They doubled down and they were like, no, I asked about you. Like, what have you done differently coaching-wise? And he was kind of just like, oh, I have kids around this age, blah, 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 blah. I was like, so you didn't answer the question, first of all. And second of all, that's a very valid question when you got 30-pieced by Tennessee and can't beat arguably one of the worst teams in the ACC in Notre Dame. Like, that question is a valid question. You now won by 17. I'm trying to get you in a good mood, and you just ignore it. I was, in my opinion, a little upset about that. And I don't know if this team has an identity under head coach Adrian Autry. I really don't know.
Yeah, a lack of identity under Adrian Autry for sure, but it didn't stop Syracuse from beating UAlbany 102-85. Our reporter Nate Cunningham, thanks so much for joining us. Always providing some great insight. Still to come here on the Double Overtime, we've got a game to play. It's the 10 for 10, so don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Set your red light shining down all over this here land.
The mysteries of life explored each week. I'm Kathy Mattea. It's Mountain Stage, live performance radio from NPR.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Hey folks, I'm Jason.
Sleigh bells ring. Oh my goodness, if I could get a reindeer, that would be nice.
I'm Jesse Thorne. Celebrate the season with me and certified reindeer lover Jennifer Hudson on the Bullseye Holiday Special.
Sometimes they come and sit in my front yard, so maybe I could collect one of those reindeer.
Plus, we'll hear from Tower of Power, Zach Cherry, and Judy Greer. That's on the next Bullseye from MaximumFun.org and NPR.
Sunday morning at 11 on WAER.
Next year marks the 20th anniversary of longtime indie rock outfit Local Natives. They just put out a pair of albums, but I'll Wait for You and Time Will Wait for No One. We'll feature songs from those records in a mini concert with Local Natives coming up on the Next World Cafe.
Saturday afternoon at 1 on WAER.
Hi, this is David Gans, host of the Grateful Dead Hour, the weekly audio postcard from the wide musical world of America's best-loved band. Join me for the Grateful Dead Hour, Saturday afternoons at 5 on WAER, your local NPR station from Syracuse University.
Sugar magnolia, blossoms blooming, heads all empty and I don't care. So my baby down by the river.
Beale Street Caravan brings the sound of Memphis to an international public radio audience. Listen to concert performances from masters of blues, soul, and rock and roll. The program is hosted by Pat Mitchell-Worley and Kevin Cubbins and features segments from industry insiders such as Jerry Wexler and Bob Porter. Tune in to Beale Street Caravan Saturday evenings at 6 o'clock on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
10 questions. If you could go out to dinner with anybody on the Syracuse football team, who would it be and why? In 10 minutes.
Time is winding down. It's the 10 for 10 right here on WAER.
Welcome back into the double overtime here on WAER. I'm Adam Gotkin alongside Skylar Wilkes after Syracuse's 102-85 win over UAlbany. You just heard it. Time for the 10 for 10. It's back, everyone. Don't worry. The 10 for 10 has returned. For those of you who are new, pretty simple. 10 questions, 10 minutes, and let's get going. Let's not wait any longer. 10 for 10, let's start right now.
Hey guys, it's Alex, just joining you from over here across the glass. Adam and Skylar, hope you're doing well. We'll start out quick, and we'll start out with a bit of a softball. Which former SU football player played against Georgetown on the court in 1997?
Yeah, Donovan McNabb, 100%.
Bang.
Yeah,
1 for 1. Hot start. Now, in what years has Syracuse appeared in the national title game? This is 3 years. Which years are they?
03, of course.
Mm-hmm.
It's not 97, but it's one of those around there. Then there's one in the 80s. Us youngins are definitely 89. So do we want to say 89? I thought it was, for some reason, 83 popped into my head, but I don't think it is.
Because I'm not confident in my answer either. So
I'm cutting you off. It's 87, 96, and 03.
That wasn't bad. Wasn't bad.
It was a valiant effort by Mr. Gotkin. Mr. Wilkes, pick it up a little bit. You have a chance now. What SU player, actually this isn't trivia, but still, what SU player do you think hates cold the most?
I want to go with...
Just an opinion.
I mean... Personally, the one that came to mind was the California kid, Chris Bell.
That's a good.
He seems like, whenever we talk to him in the locker room, he's a quieter guy. We have heard today that he likes to be on social media a lot. Usually, that's an inside activity. So I think Chris Bell.
I'm gonna go with Peter Majstorovic, just because
Serbia. It's cold out there.
It's cold, but it's not Syracuse cold. So
is it? Do you know that?
No. So I'm gonna actually change my answer. I don't want to disrespect the country of Serbia there, so I'm gonna go with.
It's cold in Serbia. Just
even though he went to school in Boulder, he's from Texas originally, so I'm going with Eddie Lampkin.
Okay. Average weather in Serbia, by the way, like 40 degrees in the winter, so it's cold.
Not Syracuse cold, but continue, Alex.
Eddie Lampkin chose to go to cold weather schools twice. Maybe not the best from Skylar Wilkes over there.
Come on, Skylar.
Here's another one. Would Syracuse have beaten Notre Dame on Saturday with J.J. Starling?
Yes.
Yes.
I think this is a completely different team without J.J. Starling.
Entirely.
And I know that Nate just said it when he was on, that it seems almost like an excuse from Adrian Autry at times not having Starling.
But it's a decent excuse.
It is. It's the best player. It's your guy who a lot of people thought was not a lock, but a very, very good chance to be an all-ACC player.
I mean, he literally was top 2, top 3 in the conference. He's still top 2 in the conference in scoring.
Yes.
That's a pretty big deal.
Yes, I think that's fair.
Okay, it's the holiday season, so what should Syracuse basketball's number one thing on their holiday wish list be?
Oh boy, number one thing on the holiday wish list. I mean, are we? I'm assuming we're talking about basketball, not like a new pair of shoes or
a new hand for J.J. Starling.
New hand for J.J. Is that your answer? A new hand for J.J. Starling?
I was debating it, but I think it might be. Yeah, I'm gonna go with a new hand for J.J. Starling.
I'm gonna go with a more athletic center in the transfer portal this offseason. This is a longer term thing, but someone who much more fits the Derek Coleman, Jesse Edwards, Raheem Christmas. Your athletic bigs, not what we saw last year with Malik Brown at the center, a smaller guy, or a less athletic Eddie Lampkin. I want a regular center back. That's my wish.
So obviously not a gift you can get right now. Maybe like a transfer portal gift card.
Yes,
for
a gift
after the
card. A
season
gift
ends.
card, exactly.
That would be great. So back to trivia for a little bit. What year did UAlbany transition to Division I?
Ooh. 1978.
And
I'm going to say 2005.
That seems like
very close. 2000.
Really?
The turn of the
Okay.
millennium.
Wow.
So here's another little discussion question here. How many wins does Syracuse need in ACC play to make the NCAA tournament?
Ooh, a lot.
That's for sure.
I mean,
is this like the rule? Like what
total
this year
wins?
to make it?
Oh no, just like how many do you think they would need to have a good tournament bid for the NCAA
this
tournament?
year.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think total they need like 22, 23 wins, and they're at 7 now. So if I try and do some like 13, 14, assuming you beat Bucknell and Georgetown.
Yeah, I'm looking at the year they made it to the Sweet 16. They had 9 conference wins.
But
this
this
year.
is a different ACC that got
Right.
destroyed by the SEC in the ACC-SEC Challenge, and that has not looked
I'd
good
say
other than that.
I'd say probably 13 or 14.
I mean, how many did they win last year and not made the tournament? Because they were good last year. I mean, that was a 20-win team last season.
They won 11.
They won 11.
So
and they
14,
need more.
15.
I think 13, 14,
Yeah.
15-ish.
Yeah.
You need more. And I think the big thing with that is you can't lose on the road against bad teams like Notre Dame.
Right.
Like, that was an inexcusable loss. You can't go on the road and lose to Florida State. Or teams like that, SMU. You got to beat up on the bad teams on the road especially, and then win home games that you should always be winning.
Okay, question number 8, the first of a couple trivia questions in a row. This one about Syracuse basketball. Who is the program leader for single-season three-pointers made?
Is it Matt Rowe?
No.
Joe Girard?
No.
Buddy Boeheim?
No.
Jimmy
Trevor
Bernal?
Cooney?
No. It's Andrew White.
Oh.
Yeah, no, yep.
So let's get back on the horse trivia. We'll get into a dog that's maybe the size of a horse. What is the country of origin of the Great Dane?
The country of
Is it
origin
not
of
Denmark?
that's a great guess, actually.
No,
The
you're
Great
very
Dane.
close. I'll say it's close to that. It's also close to one of Skylar's favorite UAlbany players.
So
Okay,
like, is this like is it Scandinavia? Can I?
No, not quite.
Is it the
Estonia?
Netherlands?
No, you're think a world power.
Germany.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Correct. And then our final question here on the 10 for 10. What gift would you get Coach Autry in a gift exchange? You can make this either like a real gift or like a basketball themed gift or whatever you want.
An offensive playbook.
Oh, yeah, that's fair. We just talked about
it with Nate. This offense is not particularly very good, stagnant, and doesn't really have a real identity. So Adrian Autry, probably spent a little too long playing and coaching under Jim Boeheim, needs to learn how to pick it up offensively.
I was thinking a little bit more fun, personally.
Okay.
If I had to get Adrian Autry something for the holidays, I'm getting him a very nice suit, because I think that college
Even though they don't
basketball
wear
coaches should be wearing suits. Some do. I think that all college basketball coaches should be wearing suits. So I'm getting him a very nice suit.
What about a military costume like the coach at Austin Peay?
Oh, that was awesome. Yeah. The fun thing about that was when you looked up the Austin Peay coach, you couldn't necessarily fully find that he was in the military. But
He's not.
Yeah, he's not?
No.
Confirmed?
Yes.
But he was. That's a great team, by the way, Austin Peay. A low major team, as we should say, with Hansel Emanuel, who has one arm and is balling out. That'd be a fun team to talk about. But we are talking Syracuse here, of course. And talking Syracuse, we've got about 12 more minutes to go. And unfortunately, that means that we have to take our final break here on the double overtime. But when we come back, Skylar and I have our final words of the night. Don't go anywhere. The double overtime rolls on.
We know you've got a lot to do in a day, and sometimes it may not be easy to tune in at exactly the right time to catch WAER News. But WAER News is always available, wherever and whenever you are, without a paywall. Visit our website to use our live stream, or catch up on local and national news, as well as podcasts on our website at WAER.org.
There is a one-stop listen for everything Syracuse athletics.
You got great talent on this offense. Like, you can't go dormant for an entire quarter. And
The Ostrom Avenue podcast provides unique opinions, plus exciting interviews from industry experts.
joined by Georgia Tech play-by-play broadcaster Andy Demetra, Syracuse.com, football beat reporter Emily Laker.
Check out weekly interviews on YouTube and listen at waer.org or wherever you get your podcast.
Set your red light shining down all over this here land.
The mysteries of life explored each week. I'm Kathy Mattea. It's Mountain Stage, live performance radio from NPR.
Sunday from noon to 2 on 88.3 FM WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Beale Street Caravan brings the sound of Memphis to an international public radio audience. Listen to concert performances from masters of blues, soul, and rock and roll. The program is hosted by Pat Mitchell-Worley and Kevin Cubbins and feature segments from industry insiders such as Jerry Wexler and Bob Porter. Tune in to Beale Street Caravan Saturday evenings at 6 o'clock on 88.3 WAER, your local NPR station from the Newhouse School at Syracuse University.
Outlet pass ahead. Davis slams it home. Jair Davis left wide open down low, and he makes the Great Danes pay.
Here, after Syracuse's 102-85 win over UAlbany with Adam Godkin, I'm Skylar Wilkson. We're nearing the end of our show here. We're on the air until 11 o'clock, so it's time for the long-awaited final words, Adam. And my final word is something that you and I talked about, something Nate talked about as well with us, and it has to do with the big man in the middle, the infamous number 44, Eddie Lampkin, and he shouldn't be in the starting lineup anymore. Bring Eddie Lampkin off the bench. He doesn't even take the starting jump, which is a little concerning, and his production has completely fallen off. It doesn't even matter against what type of competition. I mean, against UAlbany tonight, he filled up the stat sheet, but not in a super productive way. 6 points, 8 rebounds, 5 assists. Look what happens when you put Jair Davis in the starting lineup. 15 points, 7 for 7 from the field. Donnie Freeman can play that role enough to be a center. He has that length and athleticism. And plus, Eddie Lampkin is basically on a minutes restriction anyways. So let him come off the bench, distribute. Him and Elijah Moore can be your two starting quality players that you bring off the bench to create some more offense. And, he's known for his passing. 5 assists tonight. He's second on the team in that category. That's great. But he just can't really compete right now from what we've seen in recent games against the top centers in the ACC, which we haven't even seen yet. But he couldn't hang recently, and I don't see it changing in the future. I see Donnie Freeman being able to hang. So let Eddie Lampkin come off the bench and face maybe the lesser big man on the opposing team. Give Jair Davis a shot to start. I know he's not a true center, but Lampkin isn't really playing like one either. He's not scoring a whole lot. He's not even really rebounding a lot. 8 points, tied for a team high, but that's the same number Donnie Freeman had. We talked about it, out-rebounded by a 6'6 player for UAlbany. It's about time for Eddie Lampkin. Again, if you're going to keep him on a minutes restriction, just let him come off the bench. It's not worth that aggravation. He's not contributing much defensively, not blocking shots. It's time to let the old man come off the bench.
For my final word, Skylar, I'm going with something a little bit similar in talking about the lineup. But for me, it's that Adrian Autry needs to finally start his 2 freshmen, Donnie Freeman and Elijah Moore. Now, I know you don't necessarily love Moore and Bell playing at the same time, but these are 2 of the most talented players on the team who deserve to both be starting. You look at the top team right now in the ACC in Duke, And their two best players, the players who lead them, are Cooper Flagg and Con Knippel. Two freshmen. You see what Rutgers has done with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper and how fun of a team they have been. Both true freshmen. Syracuse needs to start its true freshmen, Donnie Freeman and Elijah Moore, as we get into ACC play for this team to have a chance to compete. Because there's one thing that those two players always bring you, and that's fight and intensity. And that's where this team has struggled at times, especially to start games. And those two guys, you will never have that issue. Sometimes they won't have their best game. We saw that today with Elijah Moore in his first start. He didn't play his best. But still, he is good enough where at this point, you just got to give him the chance. You got to give him the chance to get hot early, because if not, then you're just wasting your talent on the bench. Also, we talk about how good of a high school recruiter Adrian Autry has been. The class next year looks really good. Those guys want to see freshmen get minutes. They don't want to see them sit behind other players who maybe don't deserve it. I don't ever want to see Lucas Taylor start again over Elijah Moore. I don't want to see Jair Davis and Eddie Lampkin start over Donnie Freeman. Those two have to be in the starting lineup for every game the rest of the year.
When you talk about, you should not say that Jair Davis can't be in the starting lineup. It's more that not in place of Donnie Freeman.
Yes. I would not hate when everyone is healthy, the 3-guard lineup of Starling, Carlos, Moore, and then Davis and Freeman. I think those are 5 of your best players. You can have Bell as your guy off the bench. I think that's what you got to do, because Autry has made it clear that Jaquan Carlos will start on this team, and he's going to play almost 40 minutes. He's made that clear, and I'm not going to fight him on that. So, put Elijah Moore at the 3. I think he's athletic enough where he can hold up defensively. I think he's got to start. I think with the talent that he has shown, he has to start. We saw what he did against Tennessee. We know he can do it against the good teams. He has to start.
But wouldn't you like to? Are you a little worried at all about the lack of right? Like he had that 24-point game and hasn't come anywhere close to it.
No, he's a freshman. He'll get it. He has the talent. He'll get back to it. He had that 24-point game against one of the best teams in the country. Right now, the number 1 team in the country. If he did that against Cornell or UAlbany, and those were the games where he broke out, then fine. But he showed that he could do it against the best defense in the country, against a Rick Barnes coach defense. He can do it against anyone. And if you start him every game, he gets the confidence that he knows he can do it. He has to start every game.
Elijah Moore, potentially in the starting lineup. Donnie Freeman. What do you think? If you just had to go off the rip and guess what Adrian Autry who he puts on the starting 5 next against Georgetown, who do you think it is?
Against Georgetown, Jaquan Carlos. It pains me to say, but I think he's going to go Lucas Taylor to guard Malik Mack. I think he's going to try and do the same thing matchup-wise that he's done before. So I think we go Carlos, Taylor, Bell, Freeman, Lampkin. I think that's what we see. I don't think we're going to get what we want. I think that Moore is out and Freeman's going to go back in. And I think that Lucas Taylor goes back in because they want to try and have him guard Malik Mack, who I cannot say enough how much I wish he was at Syracuse, and I think we're going to see why.
People thought he might have come here.
I thought he was going to. He the Ivy League freshman of the year at Harvard last year, a DMV guy, ended up going home to Georgetown, and we'll see him tomorrow. By the way, did you see this Eddie Lampkin saying that he doesn't really know much about the Syracuse-Georgetown rivalry? That was a tweet from Q Sports Talk. They asked him about it. Didn't really know much about it.
That's great.
They got to educate him.
44. Doesn't know the history of the rivalry. He's making great friends with the rest of the Syracuse community so far.
He's got time to learn now.
And he's got a chance to turn things around and help Syracuse win 2 in a row. Next on Saturday, arguably what might be the most important game of the year for SU, hosting Georgetown. That's on Saturday, December 14th. Countdown to tip-off here at WAER is at 2 before tip-off at 2:30. Runs until, or the double overtime, I should say, runs until 6:30 with Hudson Ridley and Andrew Delapiana on it. That should be a fun one to listen in.
Great crew.
And football has a game to play. The Holiday Bowl against Washington State in San Diego. That's going to be on Friday, December 27th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. So, Kyle McCord, Fran Brown, potentially not done yet for the year. Now some thank yous to hand out. Our producer, Alex Ermol, engineer, Sam Reese, pushing all the right buttons. Of course, our reporter, Nathaniel Cunningham, who joined us, and our WAER Sports Talk Desk members, Nate Martin, Alex Burstein, and Milo Hoffman. Syracuse takes down UAlbany 102-85, getting back in the win column alongside Adam Gotkin. This is Skylar Wilkes saying so long, and thanks so much for tuning in.